Oh, sure.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's regular meeting of the Woburn City Council, May 20th, 2025. Just a reminder to everyone, tonight's meeting is being recorded for broadcast. Also, please silence your cell phones. If you are able, please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Higgins, if you would call the roll, please.
Counsel Campbell.
Present.
Counsel Demers.
Present.
Counsel DeMambro.
Present.
Counsel Ferrullo.
Present.
Counsel Mercer Bruin. Absent. Counsel Papalato.
Present.
Counsel Toro. Absent. Counsel Viola.
Present.
President Dillon.
Present.
Make a motion that we dispense with the reading of the previous meeting's journal and approve.
Second. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
First item on the agenda, we have the presentation of the fiscal year 2026 annual budget. Communication dated May 15th, 2025 was received from His Honor the Mayor, Michael P. Concanon. There's also a letter dated May 20th, as well as a letter dated May 20th regarding his speech.
Make a motion that we suspend the rules to allow the mayor to speak.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Good evening, Mayor Concanon. How are you tonight?
I'm well, Mr. President. How are you?
Very good, thank you, sir.
Good to see you're on the mend.
On the mend, indeed. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the council, Madam Clerk. I'm joined tonight by a few members from my team, but in particular, I'd like to highlight, I'm joined tonight by the city auditor, Charlie Doherty, and I just want to take a minute to acknowledge his efforts, not only in helping to develop this proposed budget that's before you, but his efforts each and every day. Charlie's an invaluable member of the team, certainly doesn't get enough credit for everything that he does, and tonight it's important that I pause to say thank you to Charlie for helping us get to this point. So, President Dillon, council members, I appear before you this evening to present the City of Woburn fiscal year 2026 proposed annual budget to the Woburn City Council for your review, action, and approval. As was the case last year, this year's proposed budget is a result of an intentional and collaborative effort that's been ongoing for several months now. It's the product of countless hours of analysis, discussion, debate, and deliberation between and amongst the various department heads in the city, the mayor's office, the city council president, council members, school committee chair, and committee members, and the members of the financial teams on the city side and on the school department side. The goal of this collaborative effort was to understand and identify the actual needs of all of the city departments, those charged with providing critical services to our residents, while balancing the financial implications of providing for those needs in a challenging economic environment. By way of background, the overarching guiding principle of this year's annual budget process was and is that this would be a maintenance year budget. In other words, recognizing that last year's operating budget for fiscal year 2025 represented a significant increase over the prior year's budget. The goal this year was to try to maintain the achievements of last year's investments, but to not add additional programs or staffing beyond what is required to maintain the prior year's progress. That theme served as the backdrop for each and every budget discussion. The impact of any decisions on the taxpayers of our city was and is always at the forefront of every budget discussion. The process was honest, open, and transparent, and I extend my sincere appreciation to the entire team for their hard work, their advocacy, their cooperative approach, and their willingness to work together for the very best outcome. All involved in the process acknowledge that there are several steps to the budget process and that the proposed budget as presented to the City Council this evening represents the process thus far. The City Council as a whole plays a critical role in the process and now has the responsibility to scrutinize and the authority to reduce the overall amount of the budget and its line item components. We look forward to the upcoming City Council Finance Committee budget meetings next week and to engaging and collaborating with the City Council members regarding the proposed budget that is before you. The largest component of the overall city budget this year is school-related, to include the Woburn Public Schools, the Northeast Regional Voc School, the Essex North Shore Agricultural and Technical School District. Together, these three budgets total almost $100 million. Woburn Public Schools budget alone represents approximately half of the city's annual operating budget. As is customary, the Woburn Public Schools School Committee's Finance Subcommittee, working closely with the school administration team, prepared its initial proposed FY 2026 school budget for review by the school committee as a whole. That proposed budget was then reviewed collaboratively by a combined city and school team, consisting of the school committee chair, school committee finance chair, superintendent and assistant superintendents, school department finance director, city council president, city council finance chair, city auditor, and of course the mayor's office. This process was implemented last year to foster a more collaborative approach and to develop a budget that would have buy-in from all. This effort has led to a better understanding of the realities and actual needs of the school department, and we anticipate a better school budget. Much like other city department budgets, the school department budget before you is not without compromises. It is, however, fully funded. It represents a significant bottom line increase over last year, and it does not contain any cuts in staffing or services. It reflects that maintenance year theme. The year-over-year increase in the school department operating budget, approximately $5.6 million in total, is primarily due to the contractually obligated increases from the previously settled collective bargaining agreement with school department employee unions, approximately $4 million. It's worth noting that we're about to enter the final year of that contract. The rest of the school department year-over-year budget increases are due to increases in special education transportation costs, approximately $900,000, and a handful of state-required, legally mandated additional staff members, approximately $550,000. The FY 2026 budget also includes an increased assessment from the Northeast Regional Vocational School, approximately $400,000. The Northeast Voc leadership team will be present at next week's Finance Committee meetings to further discuss this increase. The FY 2026 assessment at Essex Agricultural actually decreased somewhat this year. The rest of the FY 2026 annual budget, non-school related, was also developed through the same lens of a maintenance year budget. It represents an increase of approximately $7.5 million in total, primarily due to the following factors. First, the city recently settled the outstanding collective bargaining agreements with 6 of the 7 employee unions. Those increases total approximately $2.7 million in the FY 2026 operating budget. The contracts expired at the beginning of FY 2025, so the increases in this year's 2026 proposed budget reflect the impacts of the first and second years of this new agreement. We continue to work on settling the 7th union contract with the Police Patrolmen's Association, and we've set aside funds in the mayor's salary adjustment account for that purpose. Another factor driving the increase includes a significant increase in health care costs for all city and school employees, carried on the city side of the budget, approximately $2.9 million. This represents an alarming year-over-year increase and further highlights the need for a realignment of the city's employee health insurance structure. It's imperative that we collaborate with the city employee unions to address these unsustainable increases. We will be seeking to sit down with all of the union representatives and with our insurance providers to better design our health insurance plans, with the goal being to save money for the employees and for the city. Other factors driving the budget increase are increased costs for retired city employees, approximately $670,000, and the city's Medicare tax commitments, approximately $200,000. These are obligations which the city must honor. The FY 2026 budget also includes a net increase of approximately $700,000 in the cost of maturing debt for the recently approved fire station bond authorization. The city's maturing debt obligations will be reduced significantly next year when the refinancing of the Woburn Memorial High School debt comes off the books. Another factor is the requested addition of 7 firefighters, tentatively scheduled to attend the Fire Academy in late fall. These additions will help to staff the highly anticipated and long-awaited second aerial ladder truck that will be delivered to the city in late December of this year. Once in service, this piece of apparatus will restore the level of service, i.e. a second ladder, that existed in the city for many years prior to 2012. This piece will specifically serve the needs of our growing northeast section of the city. The cost of these additional firefighters, which are prorated based on a late October academy start date, will be significantly offset by revenues from the basic life support ambulance receipts. The remainder of the budget increases are the result of the impacts of inflation on required equipment, materials, supplies, postage, and utility costs. In summary, the total general fund proposed budget is $191,045,008.49 for a year-over-year increase of 7.66% above last year's approved budget. The Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, the direct charges, that proposed budget is $22,839,833.48 for a year-over-year increase of $697,169.29, which is a 3.15% increase above last year. This proposed annual budget, as presented tonight, is primarily funded by the tax levy and water and sewer fees. It's partially funded by locally generated receipts, state aid, and state Chapter 70 school funding. We are anticipating a slight increase in unrestricted state aid and Chapter 70 funding and local receipts in the upcoming FY 2026 state budget, based on the recently released preliminary state cherry sheets and on information from our state delegation. Regarding the city's FY 2026 residential and personal property tax base values, we are cautiously optimistic. However, the forecast for commercial and industrial property tax base values is less positive, with the expectation that these numbers will be flat at best. We will continue to closely monitor this. With that said, it is imperative that our city continues to identify opportunities for smart growth development so that we can continue to increase our tax base and to generate additional revenue to meet the ever-increasing financial demands on our city's budget. The City of Woburn prides itself on our strong financial position, our conservative revenue projections, and our realistic budgeting practices, as well as on our solid AAA bond rating. I'm pleased to announce that our AAA bond rating was recently reaffirmed by Standard & Poor's S&P Global Ratings, with the recent issuance of bonds for the construction of Fire Station 4 in East Woburn. We also pride ourselves on the high level of service provided to our taxpayers and on the dedication of our department heads and employees who provide those services. This proposed FY 2026 annual budget reflects those values and priorities and is based on an honest and transparent assessment of what it takes to meet the needs of those who reside and work in the city. It's also based on a pragmatic assessment of the ability of the taxpayers of Woburn to afford the cost of those services. That's the balance we are continuously seeking. We appreciate the constructive feedback and collaborative input from the City Council and look forward to answering any questions that the Council may have during its upcoming Finance Committee budget meetings with each of the city's department heads. Lastly, I will be submitting the updated FY 2026 capital budget proposal to the City Council at your June 3rd, 2025 meeting, and I look forward to reviewing that budget with the City Council to garner your input and your approval. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Concanon. Appreciate your time and effort on this, as well as your team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Make a motion to return to the regular order? Second.
Motion and a second to return to the regular order of business. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Make a motion that the budget and any pertinent documents be received and made part of the permanent record?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Make a motion that the matter be referred to the Committee on Finance?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
First item under new petitions is a petition for the Shamrock Running Club for a special event permit to allow for a road race at Spence Farm on July 4th, 2025, with request of waiver on umbrella liability.
Make a motion the matter be referred to the Committee on Public Safety and License.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Next item is petition for renewal of second-hand dealers and second-hand collectors license for Mustard Jewelers at 186 Cambridge Road.
Same action.
Second. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
On the petition by NSTAR Electric Company, DBA Eversource Energy for grant of location for service to 300 Mishram Road. A communication dated May 13, 2025 was received from Jacqueline Duffy, the right-of-way manager.
Make a motion the communications received made part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in this matter? Please step forward. Seeing no one.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Make a motion that the leave to withdraw without prejudice be granted.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Next item on the agenda is a petition by Woburn Abner Bazaar for a special permit under section 5.129, section 5.1 subsection 69, and section 7.3, as well as modification of previously issued special permits to allow for an additional dining, grab-and-go area, kitchen and prep area, and to provide more parking spaces. To provide parking spaces. A committee report was received from the Committee on Special Permits was received back for action.
Attorney Tybee, how are you tonight?
Doing fine, thank you. For the record, Attorney Joseph Tybee, Reuben and Rudman, 500 Unicorn Park Drive in Woburn, here on behalf of the petitioner who is seeking approval to add an additional 4,992 square feet of net floor area to its existing food market at 335 Washington Street to add a grab-and-go area along with a kitchen and prep area similar to other food markets in the city of Woburn. And the site plan will provide for 214 parking spaces. On April 22nd, we met with the City Council Special Permits Committee to review the petition. As you recall, at the public hearing, no one opposed the petition, and several residents of Woburn spoke in favor of the petition. After the committee reviewed the petition, they sent it back out to action, subject to conditions acceptable to Councilor Mercer Bruin. I have been working with Councilor Mercer Bruin on proposed conditions, which she informed me is acceptable to, and I'd like to submit those and review those with you this evening.
Make a motion that the conditions are received as a working draft.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay, before I run down the list of conditions, the original special permit did include a couple of conditions that Councilor Mercer Bruin and I discussed, and that is, one, there is a condition, condition 7 in the original special permit that requires parking lot maintenance 4 times per day to ensure that the lot is kept clean of plastic bags and trash, and the hours of operation being Monday to Sunday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's for the primary use as the market. The proposed conditions include the following. Condition 1, which is the standard condition that references the site plan of record. Condition 2, that the hours of operation for the grab and go would be limited to 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Sunday, similar to the primary use of the market. Grease trap shall be maintained and inspected as required under the state plumbing code. As a condition, Councilor Mercer Bruin requested. 4, grab-and-go area shall be limited to approximately 2,861 square feet. That's another condition that she requested. 5, that the grab-and-go area shall be limited to 36 seats. No outside seating shall be allowed. That's a condition that Councilor Mercer Bruin requested. And number 6 is another condition that was requested by Councilor Mercer Bruin, that there shall be adequate rodent control in place prior to commencement of any work on the premises and maintained throughout the construction phase. Petitioners shall provide monthly rodent control reports to both the Board of Health and the Department of Inspectional Services. And condition 7 says that all other conditions of the original special permit in 2011 as modified shall remain in full force and effect unless modified by this decision. So unless you have any further questions, I would ask the council to move forward to approve this petition.
Any questions for Attorney Tybee on this matter? Seeing
A
none.
motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
There is a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this matter? Please step forward at this time. Seeing no one.
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Make a motion the special permit be granted with the 7 conditions as outlined.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Yes, Attorney Tybee.
Also need to make the section 7 finding.
A finding? Get your pen out, sir.
Remember it. Madam Clerk, was it the 7.1 or 7.3? I'll make a motion that the city council make the finding that the changes to the non-conforming use do not add to any detrimental effect to the neighborhood.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. You're all set. Good luck and continued success. Thank you, Joe.
Thank
Good
you,
luck.
Councilor Demers.
Good luck, sir.
That works.
Next item on the agenda, we have, is Veer Inc. for a special permit under section 5.1, subsection 57A to allow for outdoor accessory storage trailers and containers for use in research and development at 45 Industrial Parkway. A communication dated May 15, 2025 was received from John Cashow, the planning director.
Make a motion that communication be received, made part of the permanent record.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Attorney Giuliano, how are you tonight?
Very well, Mr. President.
You're going to be
Thank you.
using the overhead, sir.
I do need the overhead, if I may.
That is fine,
Madam
whenever
Clerk,
you're ready.
Mr. President. So for the record, Attorney James Giuliano, on behalf of Veer Inc., 607 Main Street here in Woburn. With me here tonight from Veer is John Paul Kwasi and Jason Miller, who will be speaking a little bit about sort of what Veer does, scheduling and logistics, which I couldn't do that any justice, but I will try my best. But as the application suggests, we are seeking a special permit at 45 Industrial Parkway pursuant to Section 5.1.57A of the Woburn zoning ordinance for the parking of accessory storage containers to be used in connection with their research and development. The use is a matter of right. It is located in the IP zoning district, and my client is being licensed 10,000 square feet at 45 Industrial Parkway. If you remember I'll show some pictures of the site, but that was the old Robinson Supply prior to. My client is, again, licensing 10,000 square feet and proposing about another 7,500 square feet of outside space, which is the subject of the petition. So a little bit about what Veer does, and again, I'll have the representatives from Veer come up and speak a little bit about it, but Veer is basically a research and development. They're really about revolutionizing the future of power data. So you see all the supply lines that run electricity over the streets. They are doing that for lack of better terms, on steroids. Okay, so there's a lot of things that need to go into a lot of research and development, in order to make these things work. And part of that, which is, as you'll see further in the presentation, is creating these superconductors, which create more electricity over the lines, which creates heat, which needs to be cooled down. And again, I'll have my client sort of speak a little bit about that. But as you'll see from the pictures, one of those things requires a liquid nitrogen tank that will be put out back of the property. They are headquartered on Gill Street, which is right across. Right now, they just actually, I think as of today, they broke down. If you remember, we were in front of the council last year for a special permit at 6 Draper. That project has ended. This project is starting. This project will be proposed at 7 months, so this use will only be for 7 months. The hope is to sort of matriculate this into something bigger, but for now, the project is 7 months. It's very close to Gill Street, which is part of the reason why this location fits very well. Their personnel can go back and forth and kind of check on things. There will be employees that are there permanently, but they will be able to, higher level will be able to go there back and forth without going far distances and keep an eye on things. So the location is very ideal. As I mentioned, the square footage of the building will be 10,000 square feet of use. This building is 90,000, just about 90,000 square feet. Sorry, it's just easy for me to manipulate if I have the side window, but it is a 90,000 square foot office space. As you can see here, the building is 89 and change. My client's going to be occupying 10,000 in the back here, and then the outdoor space, which is going to be fenced in. So relating to the fenced in area, we are taking 21 spots away. As you can see from the diagram and the site plan, we are placing 3 back in front where they do not exist. And then the rest of those 21 spaces, actually we're creating additional parking, but we're creating another 21 spaces in the back. So we're providing more parking to the site, so we weren't playing around with those parking calculations at all. Relating to the setbacks, as you can see here, this is in the IP zoning district. In IP zoning district, luckily, we didn't have to figure out what was side and rear lots with this one, because this was a tricky lot that I think Commissioner Quinn and I would have had to discuss, but they're 25 feet regardless. So side and rear setbacks are 25 feet. The enclosed area, which will be 116 feet long by 72 and a half feet deep, will not infringe upon the 25-foot setback area. That will allow us, obviously, to have cars traverse, but more importantly, fire trucks, which are no more than ladder trucks, I think, are about 10 feet in width. So that will not impede in that flow of traffic in case there is an emergency. I'll show you a diagram of what's basically going to go in there, and I'll have my client come up and speak a little bit more about that. But I did speak to Lieutenant Mark Smith about these. Obviously, with some, liquid nitrogen tanks, there's some concerns, but Lieutenant Smith did not have any concerns. There is they call it a cryo permit that needs to be pulled when you put one of these in an industrial area. That is in the process of being done. Other than that, my conversation with Lieutenant Smith was basically make sure you have crash barriers, bollards that surround the fenced-in area that we are certainly going to have. So this kind of gives you a little bit of a better idea of the space. And if you go over here, you can kind of see like an aerial of what is going to be. Now, we had, with the help of Councilor DeMambro, who attended a couple site visits with us, we also met with New Path, right? These are all industrial areas. However, the one major concern of my client was New Path. Obviously, New Path, we all know what it does. There are generators that are going to be run at times that my client will speak about, to obviously fuel the nitrogen and to get things and get the power into the building. We had a meeting in multiple conversations with Brent O'Reilly over at New Path, and I do have, Madam Clerk, if I can submit for the record, the petition is fully supported with no reservation by New Path, which was important to us. Obviously, again, with what they do, noise is a concern, and that was our concern. And we are going to be scheduling sometimes with them to sort of have a schedule that works with New Path. Again, it's all industrial. That's what we do in the industrial area, but we are a little sensitive to that. So I'll
Make a motion that we receive that, make it part of the permanent record.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
So, before I bring my clients up to sort of elaborate a little bit, this is sort of a diagram of what is actually,
Attorney Giuliano,
yes, I'm sorry.
pause for the
I'm
clerk.
sorry.
Thank
Thank you.
Sorry to steal your thunder.
No, it's okay.
You gotta slow him down.
There's a break anyway.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry, Madam Clerk. Thank you. So, as you can see here with this diagram, this is, and I'm going to show you a real-life picture of what is at Gill Street, but this is sort of like a breakdown of what we're proposing. So in those, the trailers, they're enclosed, but they have generators that would obviously create power to obviously the 10,000 square feet, what we need. Right now, obviously, the grid can't sort of handle what we need it to do, so we are proposing generators, and we are having our tank that is going to be supplied here. So in real life, again, this is not exact, but this is what is located at 3 Gill. So you can kind of see a little bit, you have your liquid nitrogen tanks, you have your generators, the coils that cool the supply lines into the building. And then here, I should have got it better, but there's a fence, okay? And our fence will be similar. It's a slatted chain link fence that is being proposed. It will have a sound barrier that will muffle a lot of the sound so that it doesn't go down into New Path, and sort of, if you're familiar with that area like Councilor DeMambro is, that is almost like an echo chamber. It's like a canyon, right? So everything in that area kind of just echoes and billows all the way through that whole block. So in an effort to sort of reduce that, that's what we're proposing to do. This is our existing site. So as you can see here, we are proposing to basically take up this area that I'm circling here with the cursor from this pad all the way over to the sort of removing the ramp. So it will come out here, obviously reducing these parking spaces and being replaced. But this is sort of like a head-on picture of where we're proposing to put this. So it's a big building, but it can certainly house everything. That being said, again, I will have my client come up. The other thing we want to discuss, obviously, is hours of operations and run times. Now, just briefly speaking, and again, my client will get into a little bit more, but these generators do not need to be in full blast all the time, only at short periods of time when needed, okay? And that will be discussed with New Path, basically of ideal time. So we are going to coordinate as best as we can with them, and they didn't have a problem with anything. The noise reduction was another big thing that I mentioned. Obviously, we're going to have some sound barriers on the chain link fences, and we are going to obviously logistically work with the generators to, when we need peak time for these generators to run, it'll be at periods of time that won't really affect New Path or the area in the middle of the day and things like that. The other thing is, obviously, with these tanks, they require being filled. And I can tell you right now, as part of the conditions that we will draft up, one of the conditions will be that these will not be basically filled up overnight. Okay, that was one of the things that some of these companies do. If you've ever seen, a hydrogen tank being filled, or heard a hydrogen tank being filled up, it's basically, these trucks are basically at full throttle for an hour plus. When we need to fill up, it'll be at peak times of the day that will not affect anybody late at night, especially, far away residential neighborhoods and things like that. So that being said, I will bring up my client just to elaborate a little bit about more of what they do, so you can kind of get a gist of how everything works, how they operate, and how everything kind of gets put together. Again, I could sort of elaborate a little bit, but it will not do it justice. So.
Attorney Giuliano, is he going to be doing the overhead?
You don't need this at all, do you? Do you want to keep this up?
Let's keep it up.
Keep it up, yeah. Just for a little bit, Mr. President.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Is there room for 2 of us up here? Or should
Sure.
Hi, I'm JP Quasi. I'm Veer's head of business operations.
I'm Jason Miller. I'm head of engineering operations.
And we are going to, we want to walk you through our planned activity and our planned use on the site. So I want to go back to the very first slide just for a moment.
What does VEER do? So VEER develops a new novel form of electrical transmission products utilizing superconductors. So what does that mean? Superconductors are not a new technology. They've been around for probably 50 years or so, usually primarily used in the medical field. What they are a type of material that enables higher power to come from electrical current. So the way that we control that, the way that we do that is we build a electrical transmission cable that utilizes liquid nitrogen as well as specially designed heat transfer hardware, jacketing, and piping to basically carry more electricity in your conventional transmission cable. So the three main components of what we're working with are high voltage, liquid nitrogen to surround the generated high voltage, and a pipe that encases all of it together and forms the transmission line. So as Attorney Giuliano mentioned, we've been doing this for about 5 years. We've successfully built an indoor version of this product at our home in Three Gill. We built an outdoor version of this product that we came and spoke with you about a few years ago at 6 Draper. And now we are turning our focus to building a third version of this that can be deployed quicker in a more indoor, localized setting, such as a data center or a campus or an industrial application. And if you've been listening to the news or following anything that's going on in the world right now, we need more grid infrastructure quickly because we don't have enough. So that's what we're working on. And we are proud to be in Woburn, and we're actually, when it came time for us to find a new headquarters time for us to find a new test location for our product, we were lucky enough to find a building down the street, 45 Industrial, that would enable us to keep developing what we're working on and have it be close to home. So that being said, we have been working on the development of this for quite some time. We have been scoping sites out. We've planned to a T with our engineering team what this is going to look like, how it's going to operate, what the outdoor side of this is going to look like, what the indoor side of this is going to look like. And we are confident that we can accomplish in 7 months what we're setting out to do. So my role at VEER is to lead general aspects of our business administration with my colleagues. I would be remiss not to mention that I lead our safety program. Safety is first and foremost in our minds every day. So as Attorney Giuliano already mentioned, when we set out to design this, we thought about all the things that were going to keep our employees as well as the general public safe, but B, mitigate risks to safety and noise and nuisance and all that. So some of the components of this are the selection of hardware and equipment that is, that can be adjusted to minimize noise to a great extent and also minimize emissions to a great extent. The deployment of noise barriers and sort of sound mitigating accessories that we can use so that we're good neighbors to everybody, but also things like barriers and fencing that will make sure that that we're secure, that we're keeping our space contained, and that there's no potential for catastrophe or mishap. So generally walking through what we're planning on site. As you can see from this map, we are a stone's throw from the building, and on the side of the 45 Industrial right now, if you go there right now, you will see a construction sign with my cell phone number on it, Jason's cell phone number on it. We are close by. We intend to be really operating very close to this through the duration of the 7 months. We are planning what you see up on screen right here, which Jason could speak to in some detail. For the achievement of our goals, we anticipate having generators on site, load banks on site, and liquid nitrogen infrastructure on site. And although we are, for the context of the special permit that we're seeking, we're depicting the outdoor side of the space. On the indoor side of the space, this is also coming with some degree of equipment and injection into the building that would culminate in a cable that we're going to be laying on the inside there. If we are successful, when we're successful, I should say, this is going to be our showcase for our clients, our customers, our investors to show this next level of what we're capable of. So we will speak to the schedule here. We're looking at a tight 7 months to accomplish this, but we think we can achieve it. So in June and July, we have our generators ideally arriving and installed by our electrical contractors. In July specifically, that's when our liquid nitrogen equipment arrives and is installed. That includes, the pouring of a tank pad for our tank. That includes piping into the building. That includes all the safety systems and all the controls that we want to have in place to be safe. Starting in August, we begin running the equipment at a low power. And essentially what that means is we're turning on one of the generators, not two. And then we move after successfully making sure that one is up and running, we flip the second on, and that happens in September. We anticipate that September into the early couple weeks of October may be the noisiest time of this entire process, just because we'll have our two generators going. But we also are targeting October as our date for achieving our goals and objectives. So after, you'll see on the next slide that Jason will walk through, after October the noise goes down and it's much more piecemeal as we schedule one-off demonstrations. We are hoping to conclude everything by the end of December. And if all goes well, we'll accomplish that, which would be fantastic for us. And at that point, we would be, we'd be taking next steps at the site. So that is our schedule. And then Jason will speak to some of the noise that we're generating, why we're generating it, and some of the steps that we can take to make sure that we are being good neighbors.
So actually, I'm going to switch up to this screen right here, just to kind of explain what equipment is making noise. So the two containers on the left are generators, and those are going to be contained in noise canceling containers as much as we can, as also with the fences for noise barriers. Then on the far right, you have load banks that are not creating as much noise, but they do make noise. And the thing in the middle there, that's the liquid nitrogen skid. And so I want you to keep those in mind when we look at when we're going to be making noise. And what I'm showing here is that first little blip on the left there is when we're going to install the generator. And the people that are installing it are going to want to run it to make sure that it works properly. And you can see that it's going to go to about 70 dB. We're not going to do anything for a few months while we're waiting for things to get installed. Then that next little blip on the left is where we're going to be doing a lot of activities outside. We're not running anything, but we're going to be making noise when we're installing everything. And then that big plateau there at 50 dB, that's the liquid nitrogen, right? So 50 dB, that's a normal conversation type of noise level. And we really are only going to run the generator at those peaks that you see on the subsequent side of the graph there. And we're not going to run the generator at full power more than 4 or 5 times. It's very expensive to run the generator at full power. We don't want to do that very often, so we're only going to do that when we're trying to test our system. Another comment I'll make is that the generators do not provide power to the building. They only provide power to our test. Because the building doesn't have the power that we need in order to demonstrate the full capability of our cables, we need to generate. So we will maintain the time for the operation between 8 and 6, between Monday and Saturday. And the highest points of noise will be coordinated with our customer or with our neighbors, New Path. And so if they have something going on at a certain time of day, we can definitely coordinate around that. And then here are some contact information for everyone that's here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I am now done with this, Mr. President. You can return. And before we take any questions, which we certainly can, I just want to address, there was one comment by the planning director that I think had three bullet points, one being the security cameras, which is probably a good idea and something that my client will take advantage of. The second one was relating to overnight parking. There was no overnight parking that was requested, so we're not going to be doing overnight parking. So that's not part of the application. And then I think the third point was just relating to the fire department, which we have spoken to. So we have pretty much addressed all of those concerns at this time.
Very good. Questions for Attorney Giuliano? Councilor DeMambro?
Attorney Giuliano, I was very impressed with the site visits that we've conducted over there with Veer at Gill Street, as well as this potential location at 45 Industrial. One of my main concerns definitely was the noise factor, especially with running generators, knowing New Path, their operation there, and that they could have some outside activity, especially during the summer seasons, that is close to being upon us. I really, I appreciate Veer and the director, as well as their engineering staff, and how cooperative they have been through this process, and working with not only the city, but as well as with New Path. I was very appreciative. It's a great company. I appreciate the tour. It was a very thorough tour on their process and how they go about and what their goal is in the end game with all the testing and the product that they are trying to create. I really don't have any concerns. My main one was definitely noise, especially with those nitrogen tanks. The filling of those tanks, I am very well aware, because I have to put up with it at 3 Industrial, which is the Kayam Foods building. They have approximately 3 of those tanks. They have basically small, medium, and large. And I've addressed it numerous times with Commissioner Quinn, and we're probably going to have to address it again. The company that fills those tanks seems to come in at odd hours, 10, 11 o'clock at night. They run the PTO on the truck fairly loud. It runs for in excess of an hour, a little over an hour. At random times, obviously the delivery schedule being at night, it's a little bit easier for the traveling. So, that's something that I think if we would send this to committee, I will ask that we are going to condition we're going to make a few conditions, nothing too drastic, but I still have a couple of conditions that I want to make sure that are in writing. So I will be requesting this be sent to committee. Again, nothing drastic. The site itself at 45 Industrial Parkway, more than ample room for not only for what they would like to do on the process and their testing. There's plenty of parking, and they're going to do additional parking in the area that they're going to take up with the equipment that they're requesting to utilize for the tests. So at this point, I have really no further questions or real comments. Again, I will be just sending this to committee. We're going to go through the process, but I don't see any problems as of yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilor Demers?
No, having sat here for previous petitions that Veer has filed, and I think it's a pretty good example of the type of business Veer is, where they do all this preparation work beforehand to address some of the concerns brought up by department heads, by neighbors, and by members of the council. So I think, when we talk about, the type of practice that they'll be doing there in terms of experiments and using certain, chemicals, it's one of those things that I'm more confident with the amount of preparation that they do for a petition before us in a hypothetical sense than, if we'd have another company that would come in and want to do something similar. So I look forward to working on the language with Councilor DeMambro and committee and seeing this move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Viola?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Council. How are you?
Good evening, Council.
The generators, are they powered by natural gas or diesel?
They are probably diesel, yeah.
So will there be a storage tank for the diesel on site, or they have a truck come fill them up and?
Yeah, so the generators have an internal source that will be the only way to fill up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Papalato?
Thank you. So there's obviously a lot of technology, generators, power, there's a lot of things happening in there. Have you yet spoken to the city engineer or the inspection services department, so that's coming?
That'll come with the special, with the permitting. So as far as the special permit goes, it's a matter of right as far as the interior. There's going to be a lot of permits that are pulled for this type of type of juncture and use. So that's going to be coming with the permitting process.
Okay.
Yeah, there's electrical permits that need to be pulled. There's, like I mentioned, a cryo permit that needs to be pulled that goes to the, probably goes to the inspector and then the fire department. So there's a bunch of things that will need to be discussed, yeah. There's a lot of intricacies with this, but there are, yeah.
Yep, there's a lot of moving pieces
Yeah,
there, but I think if...
and I'm sure my client would happy to tour you, but it's I'm not doing it any justice by explaining it. But if you've Council DeMambro's been in there, it's quite impressive. So, yeah, and I can't begin to tell you half the stuff, but it's pretty impressive. So,
Okay, thank you.
of course.
Anyone else?
Make a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
The motion and the second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this matter? Please step forward. Seeing no one.
Make a motion that the public hearing be continued to the regular meeting of the council on June 17th, and that the matter be referred to the Committee on Special Permits.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you, Attorney Julie.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Tesla Inc. for a special permit under Section 5.1, subsection 56, to install 3 Tesla supercharger cabinets and related equipment at 425 Washington Street. A committee report from the Committee on Special Permits was received back for action.
Make a motion that communication be received, made part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
I don't believe the pictures.
Okay, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this matter? Please step forward. Seeing no one?
I'll make a motion that pursuant to committee discussion, the public hearing be continued to the regular meeting of the City Council on June 3rd.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Next item on the agenda is a petition by CB Silva LLC for a proposed zoning amendment to amend Section 7.3 and Section 7.4 to give the special permit granting authority for a single-family or two-family dwelling subject to abandonment or not used for a period of 2 years to City Council. A communication dated May 14, 2025 was sent to John Cashel, the Planning Director.
Make a
It is a
motion.
Planning Board recommendation.
Make a motion that communication be received, made part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Attorney Tarby, how are you again?
Doing great, thank you. For the record, Joseph Tavi, Woburn and Redmond, 500 Unicorn Park Drive in Woburn. I'd like to submit a chronology of the property at 43 Church Street that I'll reference during my presentation.
Make a motion that we receive this and make part of the permanent record.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsay.
Okay, for purposes of this evening, the plan was to make a general presentation of the proposed zoning amendment. We're working on a in-depth memorandum that goes throughout the whole history of the property that we'd like to submit to the council and review this matter in committee. If the council sends it to committee and continues the public hearing, I have a conflict on June 3rd and will request the June 17th date. So the proposed zoning amendment, what it seeks to do is to amend section 7.3 of the zoning ordinance and 7.4. Basically, what the amendment provides is that if there's a non-conforming or abandoned use of structure that's used for either a single-family home or a two-family home only, no other use, that's located in the 4 residential zones or the S1, that use may be reinstated by a special permit granted by the city council. If it requires a variance, the Board of Appeals would have to issue a variance, and then a petition would have to come before the council for a special permit. So what this ordinance does, it creates a limited structured path for the city council to reinstate a lapsed, non-conforming residential use. And you'll see in a minute when I go through the chronology of this property, what I mean. To provide relief in a case that falls under that category, the structure would have to be previously lawfully used. The lapse occurred for more than 2 years. The property has to be in a residential district, and the proposed use is modest and compatible to what was there. So no extra units, no increasing of the size of the property, and that the structure is viable for use, but legally stuck sort of in the regulations. So if you look at the chronology that I submitted, in this particular case, in March of 2017, a prior owner of the property applied to the city council to alter what they claimed was an existing 3-family dwelling at 43 Church Street. And according to an article in the Daily Times, several aldermen, including then Ward 4 Alderman Michael Anderson, urged the applicant to erect a 2-family dwelling. The applicant at that time wanted the 3-family dwelling, and the special permit request was denied. In September of 2020, it's important to understand this, W.M. Homes LLC, which was the previous owner, was issued a building permit on September 15, 2020, to renovate the existing structure to a 2-family dwelling per plan submitted. And the records at City Hall have indicated that the property was previously used as a 2-family dwelling. The work was not completed. There were issues with the owner contractor at the time, and the work converting the property to a 2-family was not completed. In May of 2024, CB Silva LLC obtained title to the property. So from August of 2024, CB Silva attempted to obtain a building permit and was asked to provide evidence by the building commissioner that the property was a legal non-conforming structure in use. So in September, I was retained to assist with the request. So a number of meetings were held with the building commissioner to review the history of the property, and based on the chronology, it was determined that the legal non-conforming use had not been used for a 2-year period of time. I further reviewed, what the options were with the building commissioner, and it looked like the only option, and it was a stretch, was to file a request with the Woburn Historical Commission under Section 1516 of the Woburn Municipal Code, and see if they would make a finding that the building, since it was built in the 1900s or before, was a significant building or structure. On February 26th, the Historical Commission found the property did not meet the criteria, and the only option left was to seek an amendment to Section 7.4 that's currently before you. Keep in mind that there was a building permit. It was a legal non-conforming 2-family building permit issued 2020. New owner takes over, the building permit expires, it's beyond the 2 years. There's nothing he can do to renovate that property. So again, this proposed ordinance would only apply to active non-conforming uses and structures. It doesn't allow for a revival of a use that's not either a single or a two-family property. Doesn't apply to any business or commercial property, and would allow this petitioner to clean up what has been an eyesore in that neighborhood for a number of years. And, I'm sure there are other properties within the city of Woburn that fall into this category. And I don't mean to be repetitive, but we're talking single, two-family home in residential district that has lost its non-conforming structure, would have a right to come before this council to seek reinstatement. The prohibition on non-use in the zoning ordinance was added in 2013. There was language added that said, before the language is said, if you've abandoned your use, then you're prohibited from coming back. And there was always a question on interpretation of abandonment. I might have an intent not to abandon, but not do anything on the property for a number of years. So at the time, the legislature had passed language in 40A that allowed communities to add the non-use language to its local zoning ordinance. So that's a summary of the ordinance, proposed ordinance.
Yes, Councilor Demias.
So, as many of you will remember, bullet point number 2 on this chronology was a week after I was sworn in as a counselor on this body, and this was something that I inherited right from the start. I think my second week as a city councilor, I was in a community meeting in the neighborhood about this specific property. And, I think one of the more important parts in Attorney Tarby's professional enough where he didn't include it was in between where it says 2020 and 2024, bullet points number 2 and number 3. The city of Woburn spent an inordinate amount of money combating the previous owner, pulling permits, fining, sending him, it went all the way up to the Better Business Bureau due to the fact that he was just non-responsive, and then he basically fled the area, to my knowledge. And this neighborhood has suffered a lot. The original proposal that was brought forth was to do a 3-family, and my constituents thought that that was too big of a burden for that particular spot in that neighborhood, and rightfully so, due to the fact that when you have a townhouse kind of concept, you do get more parking than your standard typical 1, 2, or 3-family home. So when we looked at options, I guess the neighbors came around to the concept of a 2-family or a 1-family, as long as it took care of this eyesore, because the neighbors are very concerned about the safety of the children in the neighborhood because of the security of the site. Attorney Tarby approached me with this concept, and, whenever we entertain an ordinance change here before this council, we always have to think about what the other properties that would take advantage of this type of change are, and those are valid concerns that was set forth, I believe, in the planning board recommendation, that the current ordinance is sufficient. But I think in today's day and age, you're not seeing people purchasing, dilapidated former 2-families, knocking it down, moving it in, applying for the variances if they have to a single family. It's just not happening now. The economy does not dictate that type of a move from where you could be financially more profitable in a 2-family moving down to a 1-family. I'm interested in getting more study and getting more feedback from Commissioner Quinn on this. I'd like to possibly look at what other properties in the city that this would impact to maybe belay some of the concerns that a lot of folks have raised over this type of, it seems targeted for that one property, but this could also be beneficial across the city to, each of us in our wards, we all have certain dwellings that we hoped could take advantage of a change in ordinance to make it easier for somebody who wants to do right and also make a profit at the same time by the neighborhood. So I'm looking forward to more discussion. I'll be planning on reaching out to some of the constituents down there, so that they know that something could happen or could be done, so I want to hear their feedback, and I'm sure there's other neighborhoods that may want to chime in on this as well. So I look forward to sending this to committee to have more thorough discussion and bring a few of the department heads in to discuss it as well, to see if this is something we really want to move forward with. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone else? Councilor Campbell?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Councilor Demers. I would be interested in hearing more about what you've been dealing with, because my first thought when I heard this was, why would we change something if it's been working? Just, like the planning board had stated here, but now you gave us a particular example. So I would like to hear more about that before I make a decision. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor DeMambo?
I just think that, in today's climate, especially with housing, to see a structure like this that's sitting there in just disrepair almost, it's almost a tear down. I hate seeing rundown properties, especially abandoned ones. So if we can do something to incorporate, something new and vibrant for the neighborhood and the city, I'm on board with that. But along with my colleagues, I want to drill down further on this and get the input from Commissioner Quinn and so on and so forth to see, how vast and how this can be taken advantage of. But, I hate seeing dilapidated, abandoned properties throughout our city. We've got a vibrant city. It's a beautiful city. I like to keep that standard up here. I hate seeing properties get run down and dilapidated. So anytime I see an opportunity, or we see an opportunity to build up and better, for the most part, I'm on board, depending on the circumstances, but for the most part, on board. So I am looking forward to further discussions on this. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very good. Anyone else?
Make a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
A motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in this matter? Please step forward. Seeing no one.
Make a motion that the public hearing be continued to the regular meeting of the council on June 17th, and the matter be referred to the Committee on Ordinance, Charter, and Rules.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is President Dillon proposed zoning amendment to replace Section 9 in its entirety with a new Section 9 floodway and floodplain district. Communication dated May 14, 2025 was received from John Cashow, the planning director, with the planning board recommendation.
Make a motion communications received made part of the permanent record.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
President Dillon, you're the petitioner.
Pardon me?
You're the petitioner on the matter.
Yes, we'll make this and put it to committee.
All right, so I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Anyone here in the audience that would like to speak in this matter, please step forward. Seeing no one.
I'll make a motion that the public hearing is continued to the regular meeting of the council on June 17th, and the matter be referred to the Committee on Ordinance, Charter, and Rules.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is President Dillon request of the mayor, per request of the mayor, to propose zoning amendment, adding new Section 36 entitled Protected Use Accessory Dwelling Units, and adding 1A and 1B to Section 5.1 of the Table of Use Regulations. It's all related to accessory dwelling units. A committee report from the Committee on Ordinance, Charter, and Rules was received ought to pass as amended.
I'll make a motion that we receive that and make part of the permanent record.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. On the matter of the accessory dwelling units, we there yet?
Mr. President, if I may.
Yes.
So as we were all there at the ordinance committee meeting, this came out with a favorable report. Since that report came out, there were some minor clerical issues that need to be addressed via amendment, so I would make a motion to further amend the committee report in section 35.2, subsection 13, protected use ADUs. That should read allow single-family residence. In subsection 16, single-family residential dwelling, there should be a space after the word right, and there should be a period after the word special permit. And then in section 35.3, reasonable should read reasonably. And that's in a form of a motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Madam
That
Clerk, I have
passes.
those written out for you, so.
And also on the matter of ADU, we have a constituent who asked this to be read into the public record. Ken Parley, 50A Marion Street, Woburn, Mass. Thank you, Madam Secretary, President Dillon, and council members for your continuous hard work for the city of Woburn. I would just like to publicly thank City Solicitor Mark Salvati for his time that he appropriated and generosity shared to ensure there were no unreasonable regulations inside 36 of the Woburn zoning ordinance. Ken Parley, 5A Marion Street, Woburn, Mass.
Make a motion,
accept that.
communications received made part of the permanent record.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in this matter? Please step forward. Planning Director Cashel, how are you tonight?
Very good, thank you. John Cashel, Planning Director of the City of Woburn. I'm not here to upset anybody or prolong this process. Everybody's been involved with this ADU ordinance for many months now. I sat in the audience last night and listened to the state representatives present their concerns and their issues with the ADU and how they see it at the State House. I just think that there are still very serious questions that still need to be answered and discussed, debated. When you're talking about an ordinance that was initially entertained as a state statute that was specific for single-family dwellings, being offered the opportunity in this state to have an ADU. And that was an issue that had been debated in this city at least 3 times seriously over the last 30 years. Alderman Melanson, on 2 different occasions, I recall, tried to introduce an ADU ordinance and was shot down on 2 different occasions. And then there was a 3rd time while I was the planning director back in the 80s and 90s into the beginning of this new century. And the city at that time debated and deliberated and sent a committee and sent out a committee, and all of those attempts failed. All of a sudden, we have a state statute that, again, was specific for single-family homes only, and to allow for them to have an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. And it was always understood, and other states have done this, it was always understood that the ADU would allow for family members and non-family members to occupy a dwelling, and that the owner of the property could reside in either the ADU or the primary unit of the structure. And that was to allow for people to be able to stay in place, age in place, you know, to maintain the dignity of home ownership until they can no longer afford to do so, or, you know, illness takes them or whatever. But now we're dealing with the state statute, again, and it says single-family residential districts. That's what it says. And we're dealing with guidelines now that have changed multiple times, and they have not been finalized. Does anybody know if these guidelines have in fact been issued as the final guidelines.
I'm not aware.
I haven't come across that yet.
Yeah.
So we're rushing for whatever reason. I don't know what that is. I did miss the ordinance committee meeting. I wasn't able to attend that meeting. I really wish I was there. I think the outcome might have been different if I was there. I think last night, if the public was able to speak, I think the outcome of the whole discussion could have been more debated, deliberated, and more serious talks could have come out of last night in a better understanding of what we're dealing with. But there's so many variables involved with this ADU. For instance, now there's a special permit allowance for anyone that wants more than one ADU. Special permit, it sounds like that's discretionary and that you may be able to, as a ZBA in the city of Woburn, deny that special permit. But that's not the case. This is a protected use, and the special permit would allow for the issuance of a special permit, but not the denial. So you'd have to issue a special permit, and you may be able to impose reasonable conditions, but not deny it. So right now within this statute and the guidelines that have resulted from not the authors of the statute, as we heard last night, but those that are authoring the guidelines. And I've attended all of the Zoom meetings in regard to the development of these guidelines. I have a number of questions that I've posed to the group that's handling the authoring of these guidelines, and they have failed to answer my questions. But I have talked to the building commissioner in the city of Woburn, and I have talked to the city solicitor in the city of Woburn. And I don't know, and hopefully you can answer this question for me as the planning director, because I'm really vested in this city in trying to make sure that we have the ability to plan for our future to the extent possible. So that when you're talking about making a single family into a three-family, and it also allows for duplexes to become sixplexes. Do you know that? This state statute allows for triplexes and quadplexes, okay, to be doubled. So a quadplex can become, they'll have 4 ADUs plus another 4. And there's also a question within the statute. Is there a limit? Is there an actual limit of how many ADUs you can ask for and get a special permit for? So those are serious questions when you're trying to plan for a city and what the population is going to be. You have to provide for water, sewer, drainage, police, fire, schools. You know, all of a sudden you go from a population of 42,000 to probably 82,000 over the next 10, 15 years. Do we even have enough water? Do we have enough sewer to handle that type of growth? And is that something, you know, that we can even fathom, you know, in this discussion? But that's what they want us to do, you know, and we all know, and I said this 2 or 3 weeks ago, and a lot of people weren't happy about it, especially those in the State House, that I would dare question our authority of home rule in, you know, all of the communities in Massachusetts, that we've always had home rule as a steady guideline of what we as communities want to become in the future. And right now, that is being torn away from us, okay? And God forbid, anybody in the State House that steps out of line and doesn't agree with the leadership of this state, you know, you're out of their office. You know, I think everybody knows the famous situation of how Ed Markey became a congressman because he stood up. He stood up to the leadership at the State House. It was Speaker McGee at the time. And Ed pushed through a statute that judges were no longer allowed to moonlight as lawyers in front of their fellow judges. Well, the judges didn't like that whatsoever, and all the money they were able to make, lawyering, moonlighting as lawyers. Ed pushed through that state statute, and there were enough mavericks in the state legislature in 1976 that passed over the objections of the leadership of the House. Well, Ed Markey found his desk outside the hallway the next morning in his chair. And Ed stood up, and his famous saying, which is in political lore is almost as famous as Paul Revere writing to his countrymen and warning them the Brits are coming. Well, Ed said, they can tell me where to stand, but they can't tell me where to sit. And Ed stood proudly, and he won that election because he stood up against, what was wrong. And this is what we're faced with now. We're facing a state that's passing state legislation that we know is wrong, but nobody dares to stand up to the leadership of this state and tell them it's wrong. And I'm telling you, when you start multiplying and dictating that communities can no longer plan for their futures and be the communities they want, and we have to be what they want us to be. Is that the America that we want? Is that the state, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that we want? No, it isn't. We all got to stand up. I know Darlene Mercer Bruin, gets up on the high horse, so to speak, on a lot of things, but a lot of things she's right about. In this particular ordinance, they say housing prices are going to come down with more housing being developed. Do you think for 1 minute, if a developer knows that he can make a one-family into a two-family and into a three-family, that's a moneymaker. Corporate America is buying up real estate, residential real estate, left and right. And what's it going to leave? So all of these properties that come up for sale here and there, a developer's going to look at it and say, hey, wait a minute, that's not a single family anymore. That's an ADU and another ADU, because you can't disapprove or deny a special permit for these. So theoretically, every single family house throughout this city of ours can become a three-family. Every duplex that exists can become a six-family, three families, 9 families. So that's what we're dealing with. I don't know about you, but I love this town. I love this city of Woburn. I love the city of Woburn that I'm able to get away with calling it a town. Because it's my hometown. It's a lot of our hometowns. Well, it's not going to be a hometown anymore. It's going to be what the state legislature and the governor dictates to us what we're going to be. It's not fair. It's not right. People better start standing up for what is right. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm sure it makes other people uncomfortable, but you know what? I'm an American. I have a free speech. As far as I can tell, I still have free speech, and I'm going to exercise it. Just as everybody else does, I'm going to exercise it. And what I'm telling you tonight, postpone this action at least until we can figure out what the final guidelines are. We're not in any rush to do this. We don't need to be in any rush. And if anybody wants an ADU or another ADU, they can go to the building commissioner, because that has already been stated by state statute. They can go down and apply for it, and it's up to the building commissioner whether he's going to approve it or not. So there's a process already in place without adopting an ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Councilor Demirs.
Thank you, Mr. President. So first, I want to say that I would have appreciated if the planning director at least made sure that if he was going to criticize a member of the city council, that they were at least present this evening. I was kind of taken aback by that. Furthermore, no, I have the floor, sir.
I didn't criticize
I'm
anyone.
reclaiming my time.
John.
I'm reclaiming my time. Furthermore, I'd like to say that, for the record, the clerk of committees was instructed for the previous ordinance committee to have the building commissioner, the mayor, the solicitor, and the planning director invited. Okay, so that invitation If not from me, then from someone else, it would have gone to you, John. You should have received that. Well, that'll be something I take up with other folks. To your point process with this ADU, okay? I wish there was more of an elaboration than just coming up here and talking about quadplexes and suplexes and whatever, because it's the first I've heard of it. I know that there'd been discussions with our city solicitor relative to a process that we would put in place so that someone could basically get a variance permit to allow for a second ADU on site. I know that work was being done. I'm just wondering where this is coming from. And how much longer are we gonna wait on this? Because for some reason, when the MBTA 3A came down, we had to do it right away. We had to get it done because the state told us so. This is legislation we got from the state. And the state's telling us to do this. And we had a lot of hard work put in it by our city solicitor, our mayor, our city council president, me as chair, other councilors on this council. So I'm just taken aback at where this is coming from, because from what I've heard is we needed to get this done so that we adhered to the law, so that our building commissioner had direction and had legal footing to stand on, and then we could come back if the regulations changed that would change it to a matter that we needed to change the ordinance again. That's been my opinion all along, because I think it also protects the city, because we have specific language about the allowed uses, and we won't have a permit issued by the building commissioner that could put the city in legal jeopardy. I mean, we can sit here and drag it out, and permits can be issued, but what legal footing does our building commissioner have to say where he could limit or put restrictions on it if we don't have everything spelled out in this ordinance? I don't know, I'm a little puzzled by the comments that were made this evening, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell.
Last night, when we had Representative Hagerty and Representative Chicolo here, it was actually President Dillon, well, no, I'll go back a little bit. Representative Hagerty had brought up a good point that we have over 40% rentals in housing, which actually was very concerning to me when I heard that, because one of my biggest concerns, as well as President Dillon, was the owner-occupied piece of it, which, as the city of Woburn, we have no say in that. They're saying that you cannot do that, and President Dillon brought that up. So I went ahead and I said to both Representative Hagerty and Representative Chicolo, can you make a move, call people and let them know that we are very concerned about not having the owner-occupied piece in this legislation? Is there something that can be done? And Rich went ahead and said that he would make some calls. Now, whether anything is going to come out of it, who knows? But if there's a possibility that we can get that piece, because what Representative Chicolo was saying, I did agree with a piece of what she was saying. She was talking about other cities who already have this and has had it in place for several years, helping people age in place, helping your parents stay in their house, and their nephew may be living now in the house, and so you're going to go ahead and expand or change the garage, or whatever it might be, so that they can live in place. That's exactly what it should be for. But you need that owner-occupied piece in it. If you don't, then I feel that the people are going to take advantage of the ADU and how it is written, and especially with Woburn having so many different rental properties. And we had the issue with Maywood Terrace, Maywood
Terrace, yeah, correct.
That's gone on for months because there was not an owner-occupied person living in the building. So I feel, because of last night's meeting, that we should hold off on this a little bit. let's just see if Representative Hagerty and Chacolo can do something. Maybe some calls that they make might actually change something. I'm not being naive. I really understand how these things work. But does seem that all the guidelines aren't finished, because when we had the building commissioner in, he made it seem like there were still issues that he wasn't even sure what to do. I felt like that's what he said in the meeting, or how he was going to move forward with figuring out how to look into each property that came forward. So I don't know if there's any harm with us holding off for a few weeks on this, because it does seem like it's still changing, and maybe it will change for the better before we go ahead and vote for it and make it final.
Anyone else?
I'll just add one more thing,
Please.
if I may. Representative Hagerty also mentioned last night that 10,000 bills are filed in every biannual session of the legislature, and about 322 of them pass. And most of them are home rules from municipalities for extra liquor licenses or naming a bridge after somebody and stuff like that. So to think that 2 representatives are going to go and get this bill basically turned on its head to mandate that the accessory dwelling unit has to be offered under somebody who owns the house already. I mean, I think that's a very big lift, and it's something that, even if it was filed tomorrow by our legislative delegation as a bill, it would still have to have a hearing. It would still have to get out of the Rules Committee as a late file now, so that it could have a hearing. It could fall victim to being sent off to study, which is basically effectively killing the bill for the next 2 years. So all I'm saying is, if a reasonable expectation would be that this zoning ordinance goes through, and if the regulations change, we can always come back here and change the ordinance to adhere to those regulations. But right now, the regulations are going to be the only thing that changes. The tenets of the state law will not. And that's just what I'm warning the council against, because we can wait another 6 months, sure. But I just think we open ourselves up to legal peril if our building commissioner is out there on an island trying to make decisions on who can get an ADU or not, when we don't even have an ordinance that allows it in the city of Woburn. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilor Campbell.
Yeah, just to comment on that. Yeah, no, you are right. But my hope is that we're not the only community that is coming forward with their representatives saying we need to do something. And from what they were saying last night, from the understanding that that I have as well, the housing of, I don't know what it's called, housing of livable community?
Yes.
Or something like that, something. They're the ones who made the regulations. And they're the ones that are changing the regulations. And so they're not going through a bill system. It sure doesn't seem like they're going through a system where they're changing and having to wait months, because they keep changing the language. So if they contact this department, then it seems, that's what it's been so far, that they would end up being able to change those regulations without having to put a bill forward to change it. At least that was my understanding, since this department is making the regulations, which I stated last night I disagree with completely, because they're making the regulations and it's never going back to the legislatures to look at it to say, oh yes, this works for my community, which is what is happening. Because having Woburn, as unique as it is, and we're so fortunate with the balance that we have with commercial and housing, but with the rentals, this really could wreak havoc on our city, and we all have said it from the beginning. Sure. So if we can just hold off a little longer, I'm not talking 6 months. These regulations changed in what, 3 months, 4 months, 2, 3 times? So it seems to me like it's moving quickly if we could get enough voices on it, that maybe we could get that piece, the owner-occupied piece. And I will call Rich and Michelle tomorrow and reiterate to go and please contact this department and see what can be done. Are there other cities that maybe we can change? Because it's this piece that's going to make a difference. And just for John Cashel, I believe the building commissioner said that in a duplex, you would only be able to have one ADU. But they did not say how you went about to figure out who was the side that got to have the ADU. So once again, another question, another piece that was never figured out. Maybe I misunderstood him, but that question was actually asked in committee. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor DeMambo? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I just make one
Please.
reference for the public at home? The committee meeting last night was not on this zoning amendment. I just want people to know that.
Yes.
It was a resolve requesting the state legislature and delegation provide an update to committee on liaison on Massachusetts housing laws in general. I just want to make sure people did not miss a meeting yesterday, so specifically to this zoning.
Yes.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Clerk
thank you.
Higgins, for that announcement. That's important. I appreciate you doing that. Councilor DeMambo?
I've done a lot of research on this. I've done a lot of reading on this. I've talked hours with Commissioner Quinn on this. I've talked with Director Cashel. I've talked to everybody and anybody that's involved in this in one way, shape, form, or another. I will say this. We've had ADUs in this city illegally for years, decades. The way I see it, I was very skeptical at first with this. I was very, very hesitant. I was nervous of all the concerns that are being discussed tonight and prior to tonight. I will say this, if you go ahead with one of these ADUs, it needs to be known to the builders and homeowners, you're going to have to comply to today's building codes currently. And if you're going to attach to existing electrical and water supply, which they allow with these ADUs, whether it's under, over, attached, detached, you can use your existing, which means that opens that home, that dwelling, up to full inspectional services. Our building department will go in there to make sure that you're above board. And if you try to skirt it and do something illegally by going to Home Depot at 10 o'clock at night and grabbing some 2x3s and some drywall and slapping something up, well, guess what? Something goes south, that in any way, shape, or form is compromised with a fire or a flood or whatever, your homeowner's insurance is canceled. You foot the bill on all repairs and any else that might have happened, including a burn to the ground scenario. So, in one aspect, I can see everybody's concerned about, overdevelopment, but there are areas in here where we are protected. One being there's fire ordinances. There are setbacks that need to be followed. It just can't be willy-nilly and just, stack blocks and, no, it has to be followed. And again, once you open this up into inspectional services and building department, you open yourself up to complying to all current codes. And these aren't cheap to build with the current codes that are in place, with electrical codes, insulation codes, framing codes, and so on and so forth. These aren't going to be inexpensive. So I hope people don't think for $30,000, $40,000 they can slap up an apartment. That's not the case. You're going to have to comply to today's building codes, and those change almost, 2-3 times a year. There's codes being added. So I just want people to realize that, and to my colleague to my left, we can make amendments to this as this progresses, because I do believe this is fluid, and I believe there will be some changes down the road. We can hold this up for months, if not a year, and I'm sure there's going to be other changes that are going to be added to this, added or subtracted in one way, shape, or another, however the state deems they want it. but it's also our job as a city, and I've said this right along, we don't need more municipal codes and ordinances. What we need is enforcement. And I would encourage the mayor and any mayor to start beefing up your building departments, because I think you're gonna need it. Well, these things are gonna need to be policed. Properties are gonna need to be policed. We're gonna need to enforce the ordinances that we have on the books and the ordinance that are coming down the pike in order to accommodate these types of dwellings. So, I understand, they call it a scare tactic and, the sky's falling, but in this case, if we handle this properly and we police it properly, it's not going to get away from us. It will not get away from us. As long as we can police it and control it and maintain it in an orderly way, I think we have a good chance of wrapping our arms around this so that it doesn't get out of hand. And as for the ones that think they can do it illegally or this and that, there are also nosy neighbors out there, I'm sure, that will be more than willing to drop a dime to the building inspectional services saying, something's not right over there. And it's our job to investigate that and make sure they are within compliance. So, in the case of, if this should be moved forward, I think so. And I think in time, if things should change, we make the amendments like Councilor Demers has said. So, that's the way I see it as of this moment in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ferrullo.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could, I just want to offer my support to Councilor Demers' comments on the legislative side, his years of experience. And I speak to my last 5 years spent in state government trying to move bills. And I would aggressively send a bill and then shove it to committee. And the next time I'm here for it would be midnight on the last day of June, every other year when they'd kill it and, it'd never come out of committee. It's a very frustrating process. And as frustrating as it is for us, if we send it off, we're never going to hear anything back until June 30th of 2026, Tuesday night at midnight, when it doesn't emerge and we're back to zero. I just want to offer my support or your wisdom, Joe, and I thank you for that.
Anyone else?
It's not a bill.
Just
That's the difference. Yeah, well, there's a difference.
Just from the chair, when I spoke last night and I stated if this had a owner-occupant component, I did not think that it would go anywhere, and I appreciate Councilor Campbell's hope and wish that it would, but in the original statute, it particularly stated that it didn't have to have an owner-occupant. My expression was that if it did, if I remember my quote, I would be ringing endorsements off the rooftop for it, because I think then it would have done good, and it could have helped the housing crisis, but I'm not sure, that is going to go anywhere. Not to say that State Rep Hagerty will not do that, and State Rep Chicolo won't try to do that. I look to the experience with Councilor Demers and his years at the State House. I've done that in the past, making decisions, leading on him with dealing with the State House because of the number of years he's been in there. So that weighs a lot of my decision-making on an issue like this. I will say this, the frustration is that the State House and the governor sent something out like this and caused this, for lack of a better term, riff amongst us all, is because they didn't have it in place and they didn't have the darn thing squared away and in black and white so it would have something to follow. So now we're here to pick up the pieces and try to figure it out and use our valuable time and try to make it the best we can for our constituents on, again, what I consider an unfunded mandate. But that's my 2 cents on it. Anyone else? Mayor Concanon, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Normally don't delve into particular city council matters, as I've said before, but in this case, this is a petition by the president per the request of the mayor, as written. And the interesting part about that is this was a a state law passed down to communities who were then tasked with implementing it by way of local ordinance or, town meeting action. And it came to Woburn, and I appreciate the fact that a group formed to try to make sense of that state law and try to craft an ordinance here in Woburn that would comply with the law but fit best here in Woburn. And I know that Councilor Demers, President Dillon, Director Cashel, City Solicitor Salvati, Commissioner Quinn, ZBA Chair Pinkham, and probably others, met several times to try to make sense of that state law in the ever-changing guidelines that followed that state law. So I do appreciate all the work they've done for months now. And we got to a point at the committee meeting the other night where it felt like most of the questions that could be asked had been asked. Not to say that every answer was readily available and known, but I think there was kind of like a lull at the end of the meeting, and folks were kind of like, okay, what's the will of the committee? So there was a vote to send it out, ought to pass. But I felt like maybe there was a little more review or pondering to be done. And the reason I say that, and again, I'm standing before you petitioned by the president at my request, so I do feel like it's appropriate that I speak. It feels like it's a little different than the MBTA 3A Communities Act, because in that case, there was a deadline and there was a ramification for non-compliance. We would likely lose significant funding and be subject to a lawsuit by the Attorney General. So it was a little different with MBTA 3A. We had to do something, we had to do it by a certain time, or else there would be defined consequences. In this case, it's a little bit different. Yes, it's a state statute. Yes, there was a rough deadline in February to have something ongoing, but there is no penalty of grant funds, at least that I'm aware of yet. So I do think it's a little bit different, and we have a little bit of time just to feel like we all are comfortable that we got it right. And there may be members who feel already that we got it right, and I respect that. But it seems to me that because we have essentially a one-page law, one long paragraph, that was handed off to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities to put all this meat on the bones, and that they continue to do that over time. And I think John made a good point earlier. As far as I know, no one has said, okay, we're done now. It's final. No one said that. Each week, there seems to be another twist on the regulations, a new interpretation, something else added. I know John Cashel gets on all of the Zoom meetings and asks all the questions, and I appreciate his passion and his love for our city, and he just cares about making sure we get this right. But when he goes on those Zoom meetings and he tries to ask those questions, they don't have answers. And then he follows them up with emails, and they don't answer them. And if you think he's persistent here, I can assure you he's persistent when it comes to this issue, trying to get answers. And he's not getting them. So because we've got a one-page state law that's been handed off to essentially a bureaucracy, and they are continuing to change and add to and reinterpret over many weeks and months, and we don't know whether they're done yet, maybe we do take a pause and see what else happens next. I don't think there's something hanging over our head that will jeopardize funding or anything if you don't vote to adopt this tonight. I've talked to the city solicitor, I've talked to the building commissioner, I've talked to almost every one of you. We all share the same frustration that something was forced upon us. That's what we talked about last night. We feel like there are things being forced upon us. We're losing the authority over our own community to make these significant decisions. And in this case, it's not even done yet. We're not even sure what the end product is. So maybe it's not a bad idea to let this sit in committee a little bit longer, see if we get some answers, see if somebody from the state actually answers one of John's emails. See if maybe on the next Zoom call they have an answer. I can tell you one very, very minor example, but it's not so minor to him. Our assessor, John Conley, and his team are trying to figure out how to track this type of stuff, how to categorize it for tax purposes. They can't get answers. So that's not a minor detail to John. That keeps him up at night, trying to figure out how to deal with this issue. That's an unanswered question. I have the feeling that there are more unanswered questions that could end up being a problem down the line. I'm not a big fan of kicking the can down the road or delaying something or keeping in committee unnecessarily. But in this case, I feel like it might not be a bad idea to hold on to it a little bit longer, maybe see if we can get some of these answers. Joanne, respectfully, I don't think there's much traction at the State House to change the owner occupancy language. As I read it, that is a fundamental principle in their minds, that it shall not ever be required that it be owner occupied. I don't think that's going to be relaxed at all.
Which is a shame.
We might get better clarity on this one-page law that reads very clearly to me to pertain to single-family residences in single-family zones. Somehow, when that law was handed off to EOHLC, they added a lot of meat on the bones, and they seem to have a slightly different interpretation of what the actual intent of this law really was. So, I share some of the confusion. I share the passion and the commitment. I share the appreciation for all the hard work that's been done. But I think I share the trepidation that perhaps it does not have to be voted on tonight. And a little more time might bring us some clarity. Those are just my 2 cents as the party requesting the president to put this forward. So, thank you.
Mayor Concanon, if my fellow councilors would allow me to ask one question without getting into debating here. Someone comes in tomorrow to the building commissioner to pull a permit to do one of these. Are they going to have more latitude to do so because we don't have something in place, and maybe be able to bypass what we're trying to be reasonable controls?
I think that question was asked of the city solicitor at some point, and I would defer to him for a legal opinion. I am a lawyer, but I'm not the city's lawyer. My sense is that there's an underlying state law that governs ADUs in the Commonwealth. And then it's up to communities to incorporate that law into their ordinances, and they're allowed to make reasonable adjustments to that law. But that underlying law still exists. And if someone were to walk into the building commissioner's office and apply for an ADU, I believe the building commissioner would be expected to apply the underlying state law, and I guess his own reasonable professional judgment, how to interpret that law. I think that would be the case while we are trying to figure out what our ordinance would look like. But I defer to the city solicitor for the official legal opinion.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilor
That being said, I'd like to make a motion
Yes.
that we send a communication to City Solicitor Salvati to ask, well, actually, I'll withdraw that. Let me make one more statement before I
Yes.
wrap it up, before I make any other
You
motions
have the
this
floor,
evening.
sir.
Thank you, sir. So, the process that undergoes this, and I think we've discussed this before, the example I'll use years ago was our sheriff now was a state representative, and he filed a piece of legislation called the School Nutrition Bill. School Nutrition Bill went to the Department of Public Health because that was the agency that then wrote the regulations for that bill. It was a one-page bill, just like the mayor referenced. That bill ended up coming out of the Department of Public Health, and it inadvertently banned bake sales at schools, because the types of foods you typically find at a bake sale were no longer allowed to be sold in public schools. The next morning, the Boston Herald had a picture of Beacon Hill, the dome, but the dome was replaced by a cupcake. Okay? So in this case, this is the Executive Office of, what was it, Housing and Livable Communities? I don't know why they changed it. It was Housing and Community Development before, but they're governed in the regulation writing process by the Code of Massachusetts Regulations. They're called CMRs. The CMRs, based on state agencies that are governed by the CMRs, are considered a living document. So at any time, the regulations that govern a state agency can be rewritten by that state agency, sent up to the governor and the legislature for approval at any time. Okay? So we could wait 20 years from now for these regulations to change again, or to not. And it's up to that secretariat or that particular agency charged with writing those regulations to just not ever change their regulations again. So what I'm trying to say is, we could wait for the regulations to change again. We could wait for something favorable to come out, but we're just delaying the inevitable, unfortunately, in this process. And that's what I was trying to say. And I do appreciate the work. And my outburst earlier, I got fired up in the moment, okay? But I think if we move this out, I'm more concerned about the liability that the city can have if we have no guidance as to how these can be issued, but the state law plainly says we must issue those permits and who qualifies for an ADU. These regulations that we'd be putting in our ordinance would be how our team would go and regulate it within our city boundaries. And I think while leaving that open to interpretation, you would even create inequality amongst residents in Woburn, because someone might get, someone might have an ADU before the actual regulations or ordinance go into place here in Woburn. And that was one of the major arguments that was made at the planning board, was about property rights of residents in Woburn and the city adhering to the law. So, we can send this back and then get an opinion from Attorney Salvati. I'll do that. I'm not going to be stubborn. It's not a hill I'm going to die on tonight. I'm just saying that it's going to look bad if we come back here in 3 months and we didn't get any more answers. There wasn't any additional review or redrafting of this legislation, and we just did it because of a prayer at that point. That's all I have to say tonight. I'm done.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Public hearing is still open.
Oh, we have somebody who wants to talk.
Yes. You have the floor. You take your time. How are you tonight?
Ann Chatfield at 10 Dawes Circle in Woburn, and I am a local real estate agent as well. One thing I just wanted to talk about, as Councilor Campbell was talking about this, and I understand where you're coming from about the principal residence, but if I build an ADU in my principal residence property right now, I want to be able to sell it to whomever. So if an investor comes in, I can't have any requirement that I can only sell it to somebody that's going to live, in my front house. So that's something that we have to keep in consideration as well as the properties, turn over. We're not going to be able to regulate that much. You're not going to have deed restrictions or anything like that. As Councilor DeMambro was saying, having the building department, it isn't going to be easy. A lot of stuff building in the city is not easy. Getting permits is not easy. So I think too, having somebody that monitors it a little bit more might be a good idea, and that will help for the future of Woburn so that we don't get too big. I get where everyone's coming from, but I also understand the aging in place, and at 47, it's already something I'm thinking about. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak in this matter?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
There is a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. What's the will of the council?
I'll make a motion that the order is adopted by roll call,
As amended, right?
as amended.
There is a motion for roll call.
To adopt motion made and second that the order be adopted as amended. Roll call. Counselor Campbell.
Opposed?
Counselor Demers.
In favor?
Counselor DeMambro.
Favor.
Counselor Ferrulo.
I'm sorry, what was council member?
He was in favor.
Favor.
Counselor Mercer Bruin is absent. Counselor Papalato.
Opposed.
Counselor Toro is absent. Counselor Viola.
Favor.
President Dillon.
In favor. That passes.
No.
No.
1,
2,
if it's a 5-4 vote right now.
and
I'm not sure if this is part of the housing, if it's considered housing.
does it need to be,
In terms of the
Hold on.
two-thirds ordinance?
two-thirds? I'm going to rely on you, Clerk
I
Higgins.
have it written down in my office. If you give me 2 seconds, I can pull up the stat.
Make a motion for a 5-minute recess?
Second.
There's a motion and a second for a 5-minute recess. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That passes. Return to the regular order of business. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Clerk Higgins, can you tell us what you have found for us, please?
So under Section 40A, Section 5 of the, excuse me, Mass General Laws, 40A, Section 5, it states that they added exemptions into the law which would allow zoning amendments to be passed with a simple majority instead of a 2/3 majority. And then there are two branch, by vote, a simple majority for the following. It's, one of the options is an amendment to a zoning ordinance or bylaw to allow for any of the following as of right accessory dwelling units with, whether within principal dwelling or a detached structure on the same lot. Based on that, I think it's a simple majority, but I'm not the city solicitor. So if it's a simple majority, the zoning amendment would have passed.
Very good.
I don't know if you want a legal opinion on that.
I'll make a motion as such, that the city council Send a letter to Attorney Salvati for confirmation that the preceding vote qualifies under the exemption to the zoning amendment law.
Second.
So there is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Just so we're clear, the two absent people would be considered a negative for the vote. That's why it's essentially 5-4, but it's really 5 to 2 to 2.
Yep.
Thank you, Clerk Higgins, for that explanation, and as always, your legal interpretation of things. Thank you.
It's a city clerk's interpretation, not a legal interpretation.
That's a big caveat.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is, I've lost my place already. Okay. Council Mercer Bruin and Council Demers proposed zoning amendment to section 11.3 to add that a special permit petition be sent to the building commissioner for review and comment.
Make a motion.
The committee report was received by the committee, from Committee on Ordinance and Charter and Rules, was received ought to pass. Further communication dated May 14, 2025 was received from John Cashel, the planning director, with the planning board recommendation.
Make a motion that communications are received, made part of the permanent record.
Second.
The motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Mr. President, if I may,
Yes,
before
you
we
have the
open the
floor,
public
sir.
hearing. So this is the zoning ordinance amendment that Councilor Mercer Bruin and I filed to ensure in our zoning ordinances that the building commissioner receive the plans for all special permits. So with that, I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Is there anyone here in the audience that would like to speak in this matter? Please step forward. Seeing no one.
Make a motion that the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Make a motion that the order be adopted as amended by roll call.
There is a motion and a second. Roll call.
Motion and second that the order be adopted. Counsel Campbell.
Aye.
Counsel Demers.
Aye.
Counsel DeMambro.
Aye.
Counsel Ferrullo.
Aye.
Counsel Mercer Bruin is absent. Counsel Papalato.
Aye.
Counsel Toro, absent. Counsel Viola.
Aye.
President Dillon.
Aye. That passes.
Next item on the agenda we have is Counsel Demers et al. Proposed zoning amendment to amend Section 2, definition of outdoor dining, Section 2, definition of restaurant, fast food, Section 5.1, subsection 29 by adding note 29, also adjusting notes to 5.1 table of use regulation by adding a new note 29 for fast food and outdoor dining.
Councilor Demers.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as I had briefed the council, I think it was a few weeks ago, on the outdoor dining legislation, I did have a meeting with Solicitor Salvati on this issue, and I asked him to basically take his best opportunity to try to beat it up, to see where any type of taking advantage of could occur within the drafted zoning amendment. I haven't had an opportunity to link up with him to discuss those notes, but I would think we would probably leave this in committee so that I can get his comments, but then also make sure and review the actual process that would be before us with those changes, so everybody would be on the same page as to how the council would control who would get outdoor dining and what current locations would be allowed by right. So I'm gonna request that we just bump this off to the next meeting, but we'll have another committee hearing to just go over that and dot the i's and cross the t's.
Very good. Anyone else?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
A motion and a second to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in this matter? Please step forward. Attorney Tybee, you have the floor.
Okay, Joseph Tabby, Ruben and Redmond, 500 Unicorn Park Drive in Woburn, on behalf of Madison Woburn Holdings, LLC. I did speak with Councilor Demers before the meeting. I understand the importance of having the city solicitor weigh in. Hopefully, you can take action at the next meeting at Woburn Landing, Prest is finally underway with their construction. The outdoor dining is important to them. Starbucks is open. As you know, both of those special permits approved a site plan that showed outdoor seating, but the outdoor seating cannot be used until the ordinance is changed. So we're kind of anxious to see this get to the end. But I understand it's important for the city solicitor to weigh in.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Attorney
Joe.
Carver. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in this matter? Please step forward. Seeing no one,
I'll make a motion that the matter is continued to the regular meeting of the City Council on June 3rd.
Second.
there is a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Next item on the agenda, under committee reports. On the order that $211,079.93 be transferred from unreserved fund balance account to police salaries account, a committee report was received ought to pass.
Make a motion that the committee report be adopted.
Second.
Motion and a second that the committee report be adopted. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
On the order that $425,000 be transferred from unreserved fund balance account to rubbish removal account and to recycling account, a committee report was received ought to pass.
Make a motion the committee report be adopted.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
On the order that the sum of $1,796,000 be transferred from fire BLS ambulance accounts to various fire accounts, a committee report was received ought to pass.
Make a motion the committee report be adopted.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
From the Committee on Public Safety and License on the petition for new livery license for Ride with Haley LLC, a committee report was received ought to pass.
Make a motion the committee report be adopted.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
On the petition for renewal of livery licenses by livery license by Checker Cab of Woburn, Inc., a committee report was received ought to pass.
Same action.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
On the petition for renewal of taxi cab license for Checker Cab of Woburn, Inc., a committee report was received ought to pass.
Make a motion that the matter is referred to the Committee on Personnel.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Okay.
opposed? That passes.
Like I've hit my word quota for the night.
On the reappointment of Eleanor Collins to the Woburn Council on Aging.
Same action.
Second.
Motion and,
Personnel?
Oh, yes.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
On the reappointment of Emily A. Lipset to the Board of Trustees to the Woburn Public Library.
Motion the matter be referred to the Committee on Personnel.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
On the reappointment of Lawrence R. Rideout to the Board of Trustees to the Woburn Public Library.
Make a motion that the matter is referred to the Committee on Personnel.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
The motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. We are adjourned at 9:15.